Gentlemen, welcome. I'm Eddie Caiazzo from RedRiverHorror.com, and I figured we'd try something new with our interviews. Usually we do the written out article, but I wanted to introduce you to my guests today, Andrew Mecham and Matthew Whedon. How you guys doing?
As good as can be expected under the circumstances, living in a post-apocalyptic universe.
The film is called Behind You, and you guys, both writers, directors. It's coming out on April 17th. I figured this might be an entertaining way to do this. So when did this all start?
We actually filmed in 2017, October of 2017.
I came in late, and the basic thing that was there was that it was a horror movie, one house, and it had to involve mirrors. Like, I had done a lot of writing. Andrew had worked on the production end a lot. Neither of us had directed, so yeah, it was like trial by fire.
It's just interesting because there's a lot more of that nowadays. Like people will write something together and now direct something together. So it's just interesting that what you guys are saying started back in 2017.
Yeah, and Matt and I had actually started writing something previous, which is why we had a relationship working together that we felt comfortable that, okay, maybe we can try something put something together this quickly. So I think that's why we felt comfortable because, yeah, we started to write actually several things together. And, yeah, I wondered that same thing. Why is that a trend and why are we part of it? There seems like some more duos. I don't know that.
I think part of it is like for me, like, I wrote a lot of scripts. A lot of them were like big budget things, and they got good coverage. People were interested in them, but nobody was going to make them. Right. They were like millions of dollars, and so what I would get a lot is like, I talk to someone and they go, well, have you thought of making this a comic book or making it a graphic novel? And I even played around with that for a while. But, it wasn't really my thing, I got to the point where it's like, I wanted to find people who were making stuff, which is the area where I didn't have a lot of experience, I'd done stuff on TV, like news promos and stuff like that, but I hadn't like produced movies and stuff. And that's how Andrew and I met, because I basically was like, okay, I want to find some people who are making things. And he was making a lot of stuff. He was doing a lot of YouTube stuff and things like that. And we met at a Comic-Con up in Salt Lake. And he was looking at some stuff that I'd done. So we started collaborating actually pretty well before this on some projects that are still kind of in the works. And this was just an opportunity that kind of arose. That he'd been working on independently, and so that came together. And we talked about directing something together because we were thinking of directing this other project we were working, spaghetti western horror mashup thing that we were working on. We're talking about directing it together. It's kind of a bigger thing, so this seemed like a good opportunity to try something smaller. And it turned out that we kind of had similar sensibilities and ideas about it, like what we wanted to do and not do. Mirrors were baked in, so we were going to do that, but we didn't have special effects budget. We didn't have things like that. So and there's been movies that have done that. So we dealt with the mirrors much more, and I would say in kind of a metaphorical sense, ideas of reflections, people seeing their reflection, the creature, if you want to call it that, being a reflection. And that all ties into idea of the past and all this kind of stuff.
So you met at a Comic-Con. What made you pick horror as the genre you were going to go after if you were going to tackle a film together?
I think that it was more that Matt and I will come clean on. I think that we have similar tastes in that there's more classic horror that we enjoy. We were attracted, like the idea of a project that was a movie that was slow to build. It gives you something to sort of stew on, and it doesn't just, all the scare moments don't just jump out and just sort of a little more, I use this positively, but grating and like grating on your nerves, grating. And And I think that's what we were excited about wanting to get into it, more than just something that a roller coaster jumps out and scares you.
Sure. Behind You comes out April 17th, and you say the film was made on a micro budget. So in Hollywood, or I guess in the filmmaking space, horror fans always ask, like, what does that mean? So you have Blumhouse making films for $5 million, and you have a major motion picture like another big studio making a film for $25 million. Like, what's the ballpark of Behind You as far as the budget goes?
Well, then it may be below micro. What's below micro? It's nano budget. It's a nano budget.
There's a lot of people that are going to watch this that
right.
are interested in making films, and I guess when you talk indie, independent, and major, this I guess will be considered an indie film. So what's the ballpark? I guess.
Yeah, I mean we were under $1 million, and by a good amount.
Okay.
Well under that.
Yeah.
And I feel like we knew that. We knew there'd be limitations to that, and we tried to play to our strengths in that, keeping it I hesitate to say. I mean, I think we both knew that we needed to have not many characters and keep it to one location. And we had two, but it ended up just getting cut down to one. But I love your older horror movies, classics, or Shining, that's a hotel in there, but just I like that feeling of isolation, and that's a tone that we tried to strike in this movie, in making the house a character in it. If we were going to have that as a budgetary limitation, and then play to our strength.
I agree that in a sense it's a good limitation, because special effects are great. I don't like movies that center around them, that are built around them. They're great when they're used well in a movie that's already scary in its own right. And so, not having them, it was a limitation. Would I rather have had them? Yeah. Some stuff would have been a lot easier to do, if we had that budget. But it is good to work in that within those limitations, especially first because you really do have to think about story and stuff like that, and other ways to make things, disturbing. And so I think it's good to have those limitations too. We had that in the movie that we just did too. I really have seen some people kind of get ruined by having big budgets,
Who are you talking about?
I don't want to say names, mainly because I can't remember anything now. Yeah, it's just I'm not a huge CG fan. I'm not a big fan of the big CG movie. That doesn't really do it for me. But yeah, it is. I think that if you're talking about people who want to make movies, it's definitely something you have to think about. If you have a budget, you think carefully about what you can do and what you can't do. That was a hard thing for us on this. It was a learning experience to learn just what you could do and what you couldn't do.
Part of being a director is allocating resources. I mean, that's a good job. It's picking your battles and we want this scene to be huge, but is this our hill to die on? It might be more effective to use that elsewhere. And it's it's not something that you want to have to think about, but it does force you to be creative in ways that you may not have considered. And if I might illustrate that, one interesting thing where we shot what's called, have you heard of Pepper's Ghost? It's the illusion. It's an old magician trick, and they actually at the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland, where you see how would you describe that? It's so transparent, and you use plexiglass, and so we set up and just reflection. So you're basically filming a reflection, but it looks like. So there's something cool about that to us. Where it's the opposite of CG. I mean, it's practical. I think our cinematographer Benji Allred would tell you that we made his life a living hell trying to make him shoot into plexiglass and put a big giant piece of plexiglass
in a room full of mirrors.
Oh man.
actually, unfortunately, we had to abandon that going forward because it was too cumbersome and time consuming. But when the ghost first appears in the mirror, we were using that technique, and it's really actually pretty cool.
It always fascinates me, like what you decide to say. You're just like, yes, we have to get this, like no matter what. Well, so the film was actually shot in Utah. Does the state and the location, did the area where you filmed and like the house where you filmed, did that character kind of creep in to the story at all?
We looked at a lot of locations. I don't know. I mean, we were, that was one thing we were careful about, and that was one thing we were careful about. That was the only thing we were careful about, the location. We went through a lot of houses, and I don't know that, I'll tell you what, that's a lesson we learned, I think, because we did a lot of shot listing and thinking and talking about the shots before the location, and then realizing that has to entirely change around what are the creepy aspects of this house, what's the actual, if we're going to make this house a character, well, what is its character? Okay, then how do we shoot that? How do we use that? So there was a fair amount of customizing what we had written into that house, and
yeah.
So I guess I stumbled my way into. Yeah, I think it did. I think it did actually play.
I think it did too, because like we wanted it to seem like a house that people had once lived in. It might have been. We wanted it to be a house that's haunted rather than a haunted house, if you know what I mean. Like it looked like it was in a regular neighborhood, a nice place even. Like maybe this family could have been a successful, happy family, but something went terribly wrong. And a lot of the movie really is about the past and family turning on each other for various reasons that I won't go into. But, having a house like that was sort of set in a neighborhood as opposed to a creepy haunted house off by itself kind of works, I think, with that idea,
Oh, I was saying it actually was a lot of those houses in that neighborhood were built by the Osmond family. So I'm not drawing any parallels to what Matt just said, but I just said it's just a fact.
That particular one was for sale, so it was totally empty. Mm-hmm. And one of the daunting tasks we had was like there was nothing in it. The walls were all white, and it was huge. So like we went there the first day with our initial production designer, and she quit. She saw it, and the time we had, she was like, "No." The house was so big that we had the whole production in there and had rooms left over to just hang out in. And, James, the creature, would hang out in this one room by himself just being creepy and staying in character. And occasionally people would accidentally go in there and freak out. It was an interesting location. I like that house. It was quite interestingly designed. It was odd. It's an odd house, but fun. What was interesting too was like the door to the basement was in the foyer, which is an odd place for it, but I kind of like that. Instead of being off in the kitchen somewhere where it usually is, it was right there. You walk in and there's the door to the basement, which is kind of weird, but I liked that.
Why we picked the house was it was just really open. I mean, yeah, it had a lot of challenges because it was white walls and so we, putting up wallpaper and putting textures in it, but it was open, and we could at least, put a dolly in there, and we could put, still look across a room and shoot something. So that was
Which is cool, like aesthetically. Like I've been to Utah once for a business trip, and I just remember flying into Salt Lake and just being like, wow, like I'm seeing this city amongst the mountains, and then behind you seeing like this suburban neighborhood in these like red rock formations that surround it. It's just for people on the East Coast that aren't used to that, it's really cool.
I like that wall of mountains there. I thought it was cool for the movie too. Just like
our exterior shot. There's one exterior shot in the beginning, basically. That's a big one, more of an establishing aerial.
Can you talk about the cast a little bit?
We thought it was really cool that Addie Miller, who plays one of the two sisters, it's fun to see her initial role. I don't know if it was her first ever, but one of her first was Walker in The Walking Dead. The stuffed animal, and so it was funny. It was fun that she was just kind of had this even rooted in the horror genre in some way, different type entirely. But that was cool. I mean, I think we liked that. And Elizabeth was local to Utah, and we Elizabeth Berkner, who she just blew. I mean, she was amazing. She just blew us away.
Yeah.
Missions, and she's local, and she's been doing a lot more since then. And I think she'll continue to. She's very talented. As far as child actors go, I think we got extraordinarily lucky with her, because she was not difficult to work with, and she'd give you options on what you needed. And
it was a difficult shoot. I mean, it was hard. We shot a lot of it at night, almost all of it. So that was tough. And she did a good job. She did get scared a few times. Like, I remember we had to stop one scene and then to finish it in the morning because she got freaked out.
Bless her heart. I mean, she was such a trooper and everything. And there was one time, and it was it's the major scene of the trailer, you know, we're walking down the stairs, and then it's the time we use the Pepper's ghost and seeing. You know, she was looking at a real reflection, and it was the first time she'd ever met, you know, the actor who was playing this demon.
Right.
So we just throw her in at 3, 4 a.m. in this weirdly lit room, looking at an actual reflection, and just walking. And you look back and you're like, oh, I hope, you know, I have to pay for some of your therapy down the road, because I apologize.
She held it together for a long time, you know, through a lot of the scene, but it kind of freaked her out after a while. And she was really good, though.
What has the pandemic done to the release of this film?
Part of that answer is I don't know, because I know internationally some things are being affected, and I don't even know what the answer to that is, and how and when things will fall. The plan was for it to show theatrically in many places, and of course that's and in the States as well. Understandably, that was pushed. I mean, this not being a movie that was ever intended to be a huge wide release and in every theater, it I think doesn't have an enormous impact.
But it was limited release anyway in the United States. So in a funny kind of way, it actually helps it, because, you know, people are stuck at home watching stuff, and actually demand for content is going way up right now, because people, you know, nobody's producing anything right now. There's going to be a lag, but even right now we're getting calls from, you know, people in foreign countries saying, hey, is this movie available in our markets? We need stuff, you know. Right. So ironically, it's kind of helped us. It was never, like Andrew said, going to be a huge theatrical release on this one.
That's really interesting, because it's like now we're in this environment for the people that are now going to consuming media wherever they are, Amazon, Netflix, wherever they are. All they see is a picture and a synopsis. What would you tell them to entice them to watch the film behind you?
I think the movie is actually different from the synopsis in a sense. It might sound like a typical sort of, you know, horror movie in that sense of, you know, there's the mirrors, something coming out of the mirror. Well, it's not really like that. It is, as Andrew was saying, more kind of in the vein of, I guess, older horror movies in some sense. And that's really kind of what we prefer. So if you're interested in that, and if you're a little bit tired of just carnival ride horror movies that are based around jump scares and kind of startling you and stuff like that, I think you would enjoy this movie. It's got some depth to it, you know, that I think is appealing to a lot of people. It depends on your tastes, you know. Mm-hmm. But I like that kind of stuff, and I think some people are looking for that kind of stuff. Andrew,
to me, this is a movie that's about people's past, this family's past, and we all have a past. We all have things we hang on to, and you know, I know this is cliche or using the title, but it's about that choice of leaving the past behind or bringing that with you, and there's scary stuff in it. It's classified in the horror genre, but I look at it as more of a movie about that. Can we leave that behind? And if it scares you, great. I think it will, but I think you'll find something else in it too.
Yeah, you can enjoy it on other levels. I mean, that the title behind you doesn't just refer to the fact that when you look in the mirror, things are behind you. It's about the past, right? the past can be a scary thing that can come back to haunt you. And in this movie, as you'll see if you've seen it, it really is the past coming back to haunt the character of Aunt Beth, and she sees the past reoccurring, and so yeah, it has like a lot of interesting aspects in terms of the question of reflections and the past. You can see a lot of things in here that are kind of interesting. Yeah.
So the film is behind you. I have Andrew Mecham, Matthew Whedon on me, writers and directors of the film. So how can people see it now? So it's coming out on the 17th. Where can they see it?
iTunes and other streaming platforms.
I just want to make it as accessible as possible for people, because that's something I was always
appreciate that. Yeah.
I was always a physical media person, and so the world of streaming and all that stuff is new within, I guess, the last 2-3 years for me. And just if a friend, for instance, makes a film, they're just like, "Oh yeah, it's there," and I'm just like, "Well, where is it?"
It's totally new to me. It's totally new to me. It's like I don't get it at all.
The only reason I only recently asked that question is because, like I said, for me, everything I watch is I'll just Apple TV and I click the movies thing and whatever's coming out, and it's on there, and then I had, it's actually James, the demon, asked me, "Oh, where can I tell people to find it?" And I said, "Oh, it's on there." And he's like, "Is it anywhere else?" I'm like, "Oh, actually, probably that is." And so he asked, and I guess any of those platforms, but I also don't want to say for sure that it's on every one of them.
Hopefully it's on some of them. I don't know specifically either.